Hello, all my book lovers, and today we are going to be discussing the Dartmouth Cobras. More specifically, 10 things you probably didn't know about them. So keep watching.
By the book, no, I do my own thing. That's why every single hook got them singing like me. And I ain't in any rush, cause I'm finally getting paid. Don't believe in any luck, I believe I'm self-made, yeah.
Hello there, and my name is Bianca Sommerland. Today we're going to be discussing the Cobras. And one little extra fact that I just wanted to point out, because I thought some of you might have noticed if you've been following me online, but yes, I am wearing a Habs hat, and I'm not very happy with them right now. But considering I was doing a Cobra video, I figured it'd be kind of cool to wear it for sentimental reasons. Because, as you might have noticed, it says white on one side and 53 on the other. 53 is actually Sean Pichler's number. There's a reason why those two were put together. White was actually a player for the Habs for a while, and I really, really liked him, and he got traded, and I miss him. I think about him sometimes, and I'm talking like he's dead, but he's not. He's actually doing well, and he's still playing hockey. But having these names of the players sometimes, or then even the numbers, actually most of the numbers and names on the team are chosen from actual players. Not all of them keeping the personality or anything about the player in mind. Some of them is just because I like the name. Some, like with White, is because the player was special to me and it's my own way of remembering them. So, bonus fact.
I do what I want, so I'm never saying never. I get what I want, so they call me go-getter. Yeah, I know he does it good, but you know I do it better.
And now, if you're watching this, it's probably because you're a fan of the Cobras, and I'm about to tell you 10 things you probably don't know about them. These are all facts that are often touched on in the book, but maybe not gone further. A lot of them, it's not because I don't want to go further, it didn't fit in the book at the moment. It's something that's going to be explored later. So, might be interesting little facts if you're a fan, and if you're not a fan, maybe it'll get you curious. So, let's get to it. This is something a little more recent, since Line Brawl was the last release. It was actually supposed to be number 6. I had been considering the relationship between White and Pichler for a long time. You could see things developing, and I was so eager to see where things would go with them, how things would develop. They had such a strong bond, and they just, I don't know, I felt like I needed to give them a shove, but there was no shoving. They were taking their sweet time. So when book 6 came around, I was hoping to get to them. Well, Tyler was like, there's some stuff going on here you need to pay attention to. And I'm like, sweetie, you're already in a relationship. What's going on? And he's like, well, remember I met Rafe in the last book? Yeah, pay attention. Okay. So I paid attention. And then we got Iron Cross, which Iron Cross was actually one of the hardest books, not emotionally, which is Delayed Penalty and Offside. Those I consider the two that took the most emotional toll on me. But Iron Cross, considering that it was 4 people in the relationship, I wasn't sure how it was going to work. But it did. And I was actually quite happy with it. I figured, alright, great. Now, Pichler. And he's like, nah. What do you mean, nah? I'm the author. I'm telling you it's your turn. And he's like, no, I'm not ready. I've got other stuff to do. Okay. So then I kind of sat back. Dominic started talking to me, and he's like, you know what? I think it's about time I get to tell my story. And I was like, all right, I'm not sure what your story is. And he's like, just listen, just watch. So I did, and we got goal line. And then finally, I kind of casually, calmly approached Pichler and was like, you ready now? And he's like, yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. And he even decided to start his book differently. You have the first note from a player in line brawl because it's Pichler. And he's easy. Not. This one is a little bit more serious, but also it ended up turning out well, so I figured it was a good one to include, and people have actually been asking about it. So Chiclet pretty much saved Sloane's life. He was having a really hard time. He was addicted to pain medication. Not so much that he had a hard time with pain, but he couldn't play because after he broke his hands, and we find out later the bones never fused properly, he was in so much pain, he thought he was going to lose the most important thing in his life. So he started taking a lot of medication just to be able to get through games, and he got addicted. And Chiclet, with her history, realized what was going on, and her support and her friendship got him through all of this. Knowing Chiclet, as some of you do, she wasn't always sweet about it, but somebody being sweet wouldn't have gotten through to Sloane. He would have resisted and convinced them that he was fine, and yeah, Chiclet wasn't having it. So he did have a problem with pain medication. He begins to have a problem again, and that's noticed quite quickly. He has a very hard time connecting to people, so having people in his life like Max and like Chiclet really made a huge difference. Even Oriana now, and you see that a lot in this next book coming up over time, she forces him to face a few of his issues, and he's such a strong character. I absolutely love him, but because of the fact that he's so headstrong, sometimes he doesn't see his own issues at all. To deal with such a strong, stubborn man takes someone special, and out of everyone, Chiclet definitely fits the bill. This is actually more about the details behind the scenes of the books, but as you know, of finding a model that fit as Pichler, it was tricky. I looked through so many images, just hoping that I could find something, and absolutely nothing worked. So I started looking at models and talking to photographers, and ended up talking to Jen LeBlanc, finding the perfect model, and hiring her to take pictures that would fit for Pichler's book. Now, photo shoots aren't cheap, and they shouldn't be. You're paying a photographer for their talents, you're paying a model for their time as well, and a lot of work goes into it. So I was more than happy to pay for this. But I'm not rich, and this is an extra expense that I had to consider. Thankfully, I have some other skills, and I started making little pup bunnies like this one. And they did very well. I was actually able to sell enough to put towards the cost of the photo shoot. So, interesting little fact that I don't know, it might interest some authors too, knowing that I was able to do that. You there were so many expenses as an author, and sometimes they go above what you're expecting. But there's little ways that you can sometimes give your readers what they really want, and then you can take the money from that and put it towards something as important as having an original image for a cover. So that's what I did, and it was worth it. It was a lot of work because those puck bunnies, some of them can take up to 3 weeks to make, but for a cover that's going to be on the book forever, yeah, totally worth it. Sloane is not the only one who had a drug addiction. His was pretty legal, though. Most sports doctors will prescribe a certain amount of pain medication. Yes, sometimes the players will buy it from other players who have leftovers or things like that. But typically, even if they get addicted to the pain medication, and yes, it's being addressed more now, but it used to be you go to your doctor, you feel you're aching a little bit too much and you need some help. They don't ask too many questions. They're there to make sure you can play the game. So Sloane's addiction was legal. Silver's addiction wasn't. Silver was actually addicted to coke, and her addiction is a bit more, not more troubling, but the place it came from is pretty disturbing because she was a child star and the only future she ever saw for herself was in Hollywood. And she thought by, taking the drugs that were going to keep her skinny and keep her awake would help her chances. So she was alone there without much support. And this drug addiction had a huge impact on her life. One of the saddest things about her addiction was after losing her mother, she thought, to make her mother's dreams come true, because that was all her mother ever wanted, was to see her on that stage, to see her acting and smiling pretty for the camera. Well, she was willing to do whatever it took, even at risk to herself. So I've always loved Silver as a character, even when she was out of control and frustrating, and she had so many issues. But that's one of the things when you're writing is authors know the background of their characters and they know where they're coming from, and they know that isn't going to be seen right away. It's going to come out slowly. And not everybody was a fan of Silver. Some people still aren't. But I always saw that little girl who was so, so eager to have her parents love her, to have them see her doing something worth being proud of. And the worst thing is, she's never going to get that. But as a mother herself now, and with her sister and 2 strong men by her side, she doesn't need it anymore. And that makes me happy to think about. I constantly say Dartmouth. It's actually Dartmouth. And having a team there would be pretty much impossible. I've had people come to me and tell me this, and believe me, with the research that I've done, I am well aware of that. One of the cool things about fiction is you can make pretty much anything happen. And this is one of the things that I decided I was going to make happen. It's actually been looked into. The Maritimes have asked about having a team. There have been people who have the money that wanted to try and make it happen. But if you look at Quebec City, if you look at different places, Seattle, different places that have been wanting a team, that have the population, that have the accessible rinks, everything that you need to make an NHL team happen, you start looking at a place like Dartmouth, and yeah, unlikely. But in fantasy, it's a pretty cool place, and I can just imagine if it ever happened, how the fans in the Maritimes would be, how excited and enthusiastic they'd be. Already, a lot of them will travel to places like Montreal, down to Ottawa, over to Toronto, down to New York. They'll go pretty far to see a game. So if you think about that passion, imagine if it was in a city closer to them. I think that would be a pretty good place to play. So in my world, the world that I created, it's a reality. And I don't really care if it's logical or not. So that's another little fact I don't know if I've ever mentioned before, but now you know. Another behind the scenes fact, the Cobra logo. I had actually worked with an artist that I really love her work. I'm not going to mention who it was just because I don't want this taken the wrong way, but I was considering different logos and I gave different ideas, and she came back with some really cool designs, and none of them worked for me. I had such a clear vision in my head for what I wanted, but I couldn't get it across properly. And I was so frustrated because I really this was going to be the logo for the team that I had created, and I was so excited for this series. I really thought it was going to do well with readers, and thankfully I was right. I also wanted to make sure that fans of the team could wear shirts with it, or hats, or phone covers, or all kinds of different things. I wanted this to be a logo that could be on things. And back then, it's funny because I didn't see many people making items with their logos or anything on it. I know Jane Ryland from pretty far back. She was doing different shirts and different merch with her author brand, but I hadn't really seen much. And this was around the time when I started using stuff from Deadly Captive to make different designs, but I hadn't really done much with it. So when I was working on the Cobra logo, I'm like, no, I want this to be really special. And so I started sketching different designs and uploading them and working with them, working on different pieces. I actually drew this stick separately from the rest, and then I started piecing everything together in Photoshop. And then finally, I came up with a logo that fit. And I took an image of all the NHL logos, put them together, and then I slid in the Cobra logo to see how it would look, and it didn't look too damn bad. So that is the history behind the Cobra logo. And little merch drop here, there are a lot of things that you can grab with the Cobra logo if you're ever looking for it. And I have one link in the description because I don't want to clog it with too much. But if there's anything you're ever looking for, give me a shout and it's probably out there. There were so many things with the Cobra logo on it. It's a little crazy, but you guys seem to like it, so I'm not going to stop anytime soon. I'm going to keep making different designs for the Cobras, for Winter's Wrath, for any other team or band I come up with. And if you guys are interested in having it on any shirts, hats, mugs, whatever, let me know and I will make it happen. Max and Sloane's friendship is truly unique. Now, they're very different kinds of people. Sloane is very aggressive and hard-headed. He's passionate, but in a very rough and edgy way. Whereas Max is observant and calm and more social. There are just so many things that you could name about them that are completely different ends of the personality spectrum, but they're probably the closest friends in the series, and they've been friends for longer than almost anybody. How did this happen? Well, Max being the way he is actually is what drew Sloane in. He needed that calming presence in his life, and seeing that Max felt so out of place, being a voyeur and, wondering, okay, is this weird? Like, is anyone ever going to understand? His father was very supportive, but I mean, your parents telling you, yeah, baby, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with you, isn't always enough when you have, no friends that you can really talk to about what you're into. It's isolating, and Max was kind of out of place, kind of isolated, and he met Sloane playing hockey and going to BDSM clubs, and Sloane decided, hey, this guy, you know, he makes me feel more relaxed. Just talking to Max puts Sloane in a better mindset. So they kind of were exactly what each other needed at the time, and their friendship just developed naturally from there. Since a lot of people have been asking about them too, that's pretty much where they started. A lot of that is in the books, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but their friendship came from a very organic, very mutually beneficial place. A little extra fact, they're not sexually involved and more than likely never will be. What you've seen develop between them during Line Brawl is the honesty of their relationship. They're closer than brothers, but the two of them with Oriana is a complete unit, and very rarely are they even together separately. Usually Max is there and he might be watching during the whole scene, but that's part of his kink and part of what he enjoys. It fits. So nothing really needs to change at this point between them. I I can't say what would happen in 5 years or in 10 years, but they have the perfect balance now, and I don't see that changing. I'm really sorry. This might be a little painful to bring up, but Dean and Tim. These are two characters I obviously love very much, and I know just mentioning Tim is going to get a whole lot of negative comments or even some more hate messages towards me. And that's fine. I'm happy people are passionate about the players and that they love them enough that it upset them so much when something bad happens. But I don't control the characters. I will keep saying that till the day I die. You can choose to listen or not. But that's how I write. Anyway, regarding Dean and Tim, they are actually the only two who really followed their parents in having a different kind of lifestyle. Tim obviously isn't poly, but he still played with others, as did his wife, and they had a relaxed relationship. It wasn't open, but there were certain things that were allowed in the BDSM scene between them. And Dean, clearly you can see, is more involved in BDSM as a dom, as a teacher, and they're the only two out of all their siblings, and that's 10 siblings, that were like that. The rest of their siblings actually aren't as tight. Not that there were issues in the family, just there was a natural leaving the nest and going off in their own direction. And they don't communicate. It's kind of sad because they were a really close family, but they just moved on with their own lives. And Dean and Tim were the ones who stayed closest to home and are closest to their mother and their two of their fathers. So there's more details in the books about their family, and likely going to be more details coming. And if there's any other questions about that, I'll answer. But I wanted to keep this short because if I was to get into their whole family and the past with their mother, and she has a huge poly relationship with several husbands and wives that she's the matriarch of, getting into that would take a very, very long, and I don't have the time in this video. But it's something I'd be interested in discussing again if you guys want to. So that's the little bit of info about Dean and Tim and their very interesting family. This question actually interested me, and I was surprised so many people wanted to hear about it, but I kind of get it, because Zach and Rafe, these are two very complex characters, and them having a past together, yeah, that's something I could see people wanting to know more about. There's only so much I can get into because, again, this was the past and they were very young, and it wasn't really a romance. They kind of used one another, and it was sexy and they had a lot of fun, but not really. That would almost be like going back into some of Scott's past relationships. These aren't really the kind of things that make you look really great. But while they were having hot sex and using one another, they got into BDSM. And Rafe is more dominant than Zach, which might be a bit surprising because Zach is very dominant, but when they were both younger and both learning a bit more about themselves, Rafe was the one who became more interested first, and he was the dominant one in the relationship. So Zach didn't exactly submit to him, but when they tried stuff out, Rafe was always the one in the lead, and Zach was perfectly fine with it. It was some fun times. So that's their history. Now, for the last little thing about the Cobras you probably don't know or possibly missed, because this was actually only mentioned once, even though to me it was an important fact. It wasn't something that was vital to the story at the time, so it slipped in as a detail, and then there have been several hints since, but I'm not sure how many people caught it. And it is going to be mentioned in overtime, so I figured it'd be cool to talk about now. Becky and Landon's little brother. I don't even know if people remember that they have one. It's actually mentioned in Defensive Zone very briefly. Becky brings him up when she's talking about Landon's past, because Landon's ex, the one who was lost tragically, she was cruel to him, and that's something that Becky remembers about her. Their little brother is named Gabriel. He's a photographer. He's actually been traveling all this time, and he left the minute he turned 18, and he hasn't spoken much to anyone in his family since. If you've been paying attention, you might be able to figure out why. And it's sad, and it's something that's far too common. And it's something that actually Landon has been worried about as his relationship with Dean developed. But it was only touched on briefly because Landon and Dean are still pretty private about their relationship, and it hasn't been a further issue since. Landon and Becky also don't know the details about why their brother left. He left because of their father. And he's been very, very distant. The family is close, mostly the siblings, but not as close as they'd like to be. Landon was very encouraged by his parents for his sports, and that took up a lot of their life. Becky got married. She developed a pretty cool career. Her parents were encouraged, but okay, whatever. Landon was the big one there. Landon was the star of the family, and the focus went to him. The youngest of them liking shooting pictures. To me, I think that's awesome. I admire some photographers, and this is one of the reasons I'm really excited to eventually get to his story. But to the parents of an NHL player, kind of didn't, it wasn't as impressive to them. It was just a little hobby he had, and well, we're going to see. He actually did quite a bit with that hobby. So I'm excited for you to meet Gabriel.
Future's looking bright, now I'm finally in the zone. 3 years of my life, I committed to the growth.
So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these little details about the Cobras. Make sure to comment down below and let me know what you thought. If you had any other questions that I haven't answered, maybe I can do another video. We'll see. I have lots and lots of stuff I want to cover, but I hope you guys are enjoying the videos that I've made so far. And if you haven't watched them, please go check them out. Also, in the comments, you will find the links to some of my free books, all of my contact information, and some other interesting links that you might want to check out. I hope you're having an amazing day. I hope you have a great week. And I will see you on Thursday. Wait. I'm doing it again, aren't I? I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah. Like, subscribe, ring that little bell. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.